Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very happy to have Brandon Evans here with me on the show. Brandon is the Chief Elevation Officer at One Heart, where they lead highly successful entrepreneurs that are seeking more fulfilling and purpose-driven lives on plant medicine journeys, which, as you guys know, have been listening for a while, I'm a big proponent of. Hello there, Brandon. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I haven't had this conversation in a minute.
Yeah.
Say again?
I was going to say, good to have any human contact at this point.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
We're several months into, you had asked me if I'm here at the Mystic Manor as we're recording, and I responded with, well, it used to be called the Mystic Manor. Now it's a quarantine castle. So it's been quite the chrysalis, the way I like to view it here with all of this, coronavirus stuff. And it seems like things are starting to open up a little bit, although I don't know if there's going to be even a bigger wave, or I don't know. What do you think? You think this is going to get worse from states opening up and people getting, tired of being cooped up and starting to mingle more?
I think it's going to be a process and a journey. I don't want to attach worse to it, but I do think the process is going to continue to play out, and it'll be interesting to watch how our own actions contribute to that. But it's certainly several steps from getting it out of our system.
Yeah. I guess time shall tell. Well, let's start at the same predictable spot I always start. I like to always ask my Soul Share guest this question to kick things off. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I would say elevating powerful leaders so that they can create more positive contributions in the world. That's what we do with One Heart, and that's just personal passion of mine. I feel that's, been my personal path, and more and more I see leaders out there that are looking to make contributions, or looking to do work that's fulfilling and that really feeds their soul. And so anytime I have the opportunity to be able to do that and support others in doing that, I seem to create a lot of energy around that and excitement.
Beautiful. Well, elevating others in the elevator seems appropriate. So we'll take it. Why don't you give us a little background, if you would? I always like to give some context to the listeners and myself for who we're hearing from. How did you end up on this path?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story, I mean, just kind of not taking you back too far, but I was a tech entrepreneur in largely New York. Built a couple companies over about a 15-year period. One of them, exited. One of them raised a bunch of VC money,
Hmm.
and got to a point where my investors were asking me to raise a bunch more VC money, and the company was having a lot of success, was growing, tripling year over year. And I just kind of got to this point where I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. We
Hmm.
were largely in the social marketing space, helping a lot of brands sell unhealthy, unneeded products. And
Right.
I had built a really good team, really good people around me, but it just started to look at what we were actually creating and doing on a daily basis. And I just, you know, I say overnight, it wasn't quite overnight, but just woke up and couldn't do that any longer. And that coincided with my first marriage as well. I had, around that time gotten engaged, ended up having about a year-long marriage and breaking that off. And that whole process was just, very difficult I'd kind of gotten to this point where it felt like I had, achieved everything I was looking to achieve. Had a nice apartment in New York, had some financial success, had career success, uh, had an amazing wife, and just looked around and nothing was hitting. I wasn't feeling it. I felt like something major was missing. And really it was, I really was not connected to who I am, who I was. Um, and that really started a long process for me and a journey for me to kind of figure that out. And I ended up getting fired from the company because I wouldn't raise the money
Oh,
after
wow.
several requests. Um, Stayed on a little bit, and as we put a new CEO in place, left there, ended up leaving the marriage, and traveled for the first time in my life. Kind of took time off from work, went to Southeast Asia for several months, got deeper into yoga, meditation, some other spiritual practices, and then and found plant medicine, mainly ayahuasca, during this journey. And for me, that was a pretty transformational moment in that I had always, loved this idea of spirituality. I had studied Kabbalah for 5 years in New York. I've read tons of books, but it was always an intellectual exercise. It was always like information and stuff I was
Sure.
processing with my mind.
Hmm.
And for the first time, really, with ayahuasca, I started to get into experiencing and feeling things at a much deeper level and coming from my heart. And so that's really been the journey for me over, it's now been 5, 6 years, um, of just really dropping further and further into my heart and trying to balance the mind and heart together, um, to continue to create, to continue to do things in this world with meaning, but do so from kind of a different perspective in a different place. And in doing that for myself, ended up creating I hate to call it a business, but create an organization around that, that really supports the interest I have, and my business partner and best friend have, in doing so. And that really happened, sort of by accident, or nothing's an accident, but that kind of happened serendipitously,
Right.
as I in one of in one of my ayahuasca ceremonies, I received, really this message to write this article, and there was
Mm.
nothing else coming through that day, and it had started coming through in a previous ceremony, and then it was literally the only thing that came through, and I'm like, okay, if I don't do this, this is all I get.
Right.
Um, and it started, telling me, almost writing, I was almost writing it in ceremony,
Wow.
and up to the title, which was Lost on Purpose. And
Mm.
I ended up writing this article, right after, on Medium. I had never written anything personally, had written some stuff, business wise,
Yeah.
and was really nervous about putting it out. It kind of was almost a coming out story of my spirituality. People knew me as this, very type A business guy, with all the answers and super analytic. And I almost felt like I had to write this article because I didn't even know how to talk to people anymore. I felt like, people still looked at me one way, and I was, I had really shifted, and even down to my parents, my family, like, how do I kind of express this? So I wrote this whole article, um, and it took me a few months to post it. Finally, I turned 40, and it was my 40th birthday, and I'm like, if I don't post this now, when am I going to post it? And posted it on Medium, and it ended up going pretty viral, despite being, it was like it's a 25-minute read, and
Wow.
super long article. I had no, I had no followers at the time on Medium, hadn't written anything, and just kind of took off. And I was getting a lot of feedback um, from people via comments, via emails, via people finding me on my social networks, that this was their story too, and
Mm.
just kept getting that message, like, hey, I had success doing this, or I did this, and I I'm at, many of them at a crossroads, not knowing what to do next. Some had already started the journey, and just felt this desire to help. And I was on an ayahuasca retreat shortly after, and when I got back, I just said to my business partner, best friend, Barry, we need to do this. And at the time, it was really just kind of a side thing. Let's bring a bunch of entrepreneurs and change makers and people who have had success in their various fields, whether it's corporate America or creatively, and just bring these people together and see what happens when we do the medicine intentionally. Created some really custom programming around that, and just brought people together in community in some unique ways. And we were just blown away by what occurred, how close these people got, the level of breakthroughs, and what some of these people have done back in their communities when they left. And we had started a couple other businesses at the time, ended up spinning those off, and just saying, like, we want to focus in on this, not really knowing what this is. And so
Mm.
that's really how One Heart Journeys was born. And has been a focus. We had been kind of scaling up the number of journeys, and really building out the community. Obviously, COVID has not helped us there, but
Right.
it's getting us to be a little bit creative, and just really rethink and think about what this is, and how we ground it, and build it for the future.
Yeah, yeah, it's very similar to what we're dealing with over here with having done,
Hmm.
retreats at the Mystic Manor. It's similar thing. It's like, this is not exactly conducive to travel. So, yeah, how do we pivot and make the most of it? And, hearing your journey, it truly is one that seems to be so common with people, as I like to put it, or my friend that I've all of my ayahuasca journeys have been with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and the way he puts it is like, so many people reach that goal line, but haven't done the work on the soul line, and so you get to the goal line and you're like, okay, I've achieved X, Y, Z. This is what the world told me is happiness and success, and not exactly feeling as fulfilling as I'd like. Now let's look at the soul line, right? And so that seems to be such a common theme, and so necessary, and so completely necessary with like type A entrepreneurial types. And
Hmm.
I certainly can relate, having had one foot in both of these worlds myself. It's a wonderful thing that you're doing. And how long, you said about 5 or 6 years you've been leading journeys?
No, we've been leading them a little over 2 years, but yeah,
Okay.
my personal journey, I would say, has been about 6 or so years, where
Got
I've
it.
really gone kind of deep into some of my growth.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I see. So when you take groups down to South America typically?
Yeah,
Is
generally Costa Rica is where we like to do them. So yeah, we bring people down to Costa Rica. The groups are typically about 50 people, with staff being about 10 to 12 of those, and then we usually bring about 35, 40 guests, um, which is been a great mix for us. We have it's kind of intimate enough where everyone really gets to know each other, and big enough where you really get to build a pretty amazing tribe,
Yeah.
locally, and then connect to the broader tribe of One Heart once they leave these journeys. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we also, it's not just the 1 week. We it's actually an 8-week program. So we have 2 weeks before, where we do kind of prep work. They're
Oh,
also
wow.
part of small group teams called elevation groups, and then after the journey, we do a 5-week integration program, which has we found super critical. Unfortunately, not enough people do those with these type of journeys, and that's really where most of the gains and work happens. You have some pretty powerful breakthroughs and insights on the journeys, and then really working to help them integrate those, both through some exercises and modules, but largely through the community that they form and the relationships they form, the support system they form that they have, post journey
Yeah.
and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think the integration piece is critical. And a lot of times, people are, of course, have the experience and then they're just dropped back into their life with no sort of support system. Meanwhile, their,
Yeah.
reality has been, as they knew it, has been shifted or shattered or expanded or what, or all of
Absolutely.
the above, right? So it's, yeah, that's wonderful that you have such an intensive and thorough, you know, process, not just the
Mhm.
experience itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's some, I forgot what you were saying earlier, but it made me think of, I mean, there's some pretty strong paradigm shifts, especially with, I mean, with anyone, but with this demographic in particular, these high achievers, um, so used to, you know, looking at the world as what can I achieve? What goals can I set? What's next? In this linear path of checkboxing and achieving the next goal. And so it's really, I think a lot of our thinking and a lot of the things that we like to help support is like, how do you continue to create? Because these are powerful people. These are people that have the ability to, change our world. How do you enable them to continue to create? How do they go through that process without this type A mentality? And
Right.
you know, switching up the language towards, setting intentions and surrendering, and, all these things that are, my favorite talk, I talk about surrender on the first day of every journey. And, it's amazing how, so many people just can't get their head around it then until, until they go through the experience.
Right.
We have them read The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer before,
Oh, I
which is
love that.
amazing. Yeah, amazing book. And it's just such a hard concept. And, until you start to experience it, because it's not really something you can intellectually understand. And
Yeah.
so, using these types of experiences, you can viscerally experience it, and then start to find ways to integrate that into your lives.
Yeah. I think surrender can be particularly challenging for the overachiever type A,
Hmm.
personality, I think. And as we continue to level up and ascend, as some would put it, and, grow into the next greatest and greatest versions of ourselves, both individually and collectively, I believe the thing that we're going to be prompted to do over and over and over again as our old world sort of falls away, so something new can be born. The caterpillar has to surrender to become the
Hmm.
butterfly, and I think that's something that is absolutely paramount for everyone to just get used to, because we're on
Hmm.
a fast track of growth and expansion, I believe. And if you're holding on, to the rocks, if you will, as the stream is flowing ever more, steadily and quickly. And if you're trying to hold on to the rocks, you're going to get pounded against them, I believe, versus, or my son actually said it really well the other day. He's like, he equated it to surfing. He's like, look, if you're in the ocean and you're trying really, really hard to fight the currents and everything, you get exhausted and usually drown, with the riptide or
Hmm.
whatever. They say, let it take you, and then, kind of gently swim out of it. And, and he equated to like, look, you can fight this massive, massive ocean, or you can learn how to surf and ride the waves. And I think that's, it's even maybe a better way to look at it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we're getting the biggest collective lesson of that of our lifetime, probably with COVID. And people
Yeah.
have people have all these plans, all these businesses they've started, trips they have planned, and just everything is everything is up in the air, and so people are being forced to surrender.
Yeah.
I wrote an article recently comparing COVID to a psychedelic experience, and there's so many there's so many comparisons, and you're really asked to um, surrender into the experience, and kind of each day, and you know things are quite different. You're just kind of going through the journey, and kind of observing, understanding, and hopefully taking some time to step back and assess, and just realign.
Yeah. Life's what happens when your plans don't work out, right?
Yeah.
so, so
Yeah, I
uh,
think Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face.
exactly. That's good. I like that. I like that a lot. That's great. So with your journeys, is it all ayahuasca focused? Are there other plant medicines that you incorporate, or um,
Right now, all of our journeys have included ayahuasca. We do the journeys themselves include many modalities. So we're doing yoga, meditation, breath work. We have several workshops that we run through it. Often there's sound healing and temescal, sweat lodges. So there's a lot of things that we integrate with that. But to date, we were scheduled to do 5 of these journeys this year. Obviously, we've already had to postpone one, and may have to postpone another. So for us, we've had just a lot of people wanting to go on those journeys. Almost everyone that comes, about 90% are people are referred. So we've been just trying to kind of keep up with, those retreats, also knowing that um, it's hard to replicate, what ayahuasca can do in a short period of time. And we've kind of created a really amazing program around it. But that being said, I think there are, other things with or without plant medicine that we'd be looking towards in the future. We've been toying with, or probably a little more than toying with, but looking at a center in Costa Rica, and having our own space. So we would like to
cool?
create different transformational experiences, and different ways that people can integrate, different ways that they can enjoy the community over get together with community, collaborate with community. So all of that's kind of in our purview, and we've been trying to take it just journey by journey, especially now with what's happening. We'll just be excited to have our next journey happen.
Yeah. Right. 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 When is your next one scheduled? And it sounds like you may
Uh,
need to reschedule, but
yeah, we do have one the end of July. We're probably by this week going to make a call on that. Costa
mm,
Rica just extended their borders, closed their borders till June 15th. So most likely it'll
well,
be fall.
got it.
So most likely it'll be a September, October thing. We'll be announcing that soon. And then we traditionally have had a New Year's journey, which we plan to have as well.
Cool. That's a great way to bring in the new year.
Absolutely.
So have you obviously ayahuasca is the um, I guess the key compound is DMT, and it's a sort of
Hmm.
a slow release of DMT, which is found in nature so readily,
Hmm.
which is for anyone who out there who hasn't. I think a lot of the listeners are at least aware of ayahuasca and DMT, and there may
Hmm.
be a few that aren't, but it's, this is a compound that's found inside of you, right?
Hmm.
Even when you do breath work, DMT is
Yep.
released in the lungs, right? So it's
Yep.
or when you're dreaming and near death, a large dose of DMT is released.
Yeah, exactly. Birth and death are the largest doses of
Right.
DMT that we experience in our bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting because some people I've heard even suggest that this whole reality is just a DMT trip, right? That we've acclimated to, and I think that's just like wow, and it's so common in nature and in plant life and in animal
Hmm.
kingdom, plant kingdom, and it's just everywhere. And it's a simple
Hmm.
compound that also is so incredible. I mean, I just had DMT experience. I've done it several times in my life, but really a really powerful one recently. I did
Hmm.
5-MeO DMT a while back, several years ago, and we did an episode on it. And
Hmm.
then, it'd been a while since I've, done either. I've done 6 ayahuasca journeys as well, and that's
Hmm.
been a couple years, the last one, and DMT recently, and it's just like, I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's such a, where of course ayahuasca being a slower release, longer sort of experience, DMT's like to the moon and back in 10 minutes or whatever.
Hmm.
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
have you experimented with DMT as well?
I've done 5-MeO, uh, and Chenga. I don't know if you're familiar with Chenga, which
I'm
is,
familiar. I haven't. I've never. I have no experience with it, but I know of it.
yeah, there's a bunch of compounds mixed. I don't know that I can name them all, but they say it's like a smoked ayahuasca experience. It's a little bit longer than a traditional DMT experience. I haven't done the synthetic
Hmm.
DMT experience.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say about the 5-MeO, I had a very beautiful experience. I was going in like expecting, like I'm like I had a friend that had like a full ego death and Kundalini awakening, and I'm like, okay, I just want to have an ego death. I'll go through. This is going to be tough. I'm going to go through it,
Yep.
and um, I had the experience, and it really was just like shot me into pure bliss, and it
Wow.
was, it felt like, you know, that moment of death or rebirth or whatever, just kind of going into collective consciousness, feeling just at one with universal love. And then me being kind of the type A that I am, I'm afterwards, I'm just kind of like, is that, or I call myself a recovering type A, but I'm like, is that it? I'm like, I just experienced like this beautiful, perfect moment. And I'm just kind of like, what is it? What was the learning? What was the lesson? What was what am I taking away? And, it was, I think that was the lesson. And just for me, it was just being present and living in the beauty of the moment versus I think a lot of times, um, I'm expecting the struggle or the, to go through something so that I can, you know, kind of face it and have this big lesson and move forward and move through it. And, um,
Right.
I think in many, many ways, I think type A's and entrepreneurs in general are masochists. To start a company and go through what we go through.
It's
Um,
true. Well said.
yeah, you have to be a bit of a masochist, and I think sometimes you could say the same with ayahuasca, especially people who have done it quite a few times. It's and many of my experiences are absolutely beautiful and loving and divine. But it's also some of those more difficult experiences that feel like I have some big breakthroughs and things that I go through, and we subject we put ourselves through that, um, you know knowingly, willingly, uh, because we know that's the I hate to use shortcut, but yeah, that's the way to um, really create some massive gains and growth in our lives.
Quickly, yeah. The way my friend put
Yeah.
it is, you can go to 25 years of therapy and have, go from, you know, point A to point B in growth, or you
Hmm.
can spend one night with ayahuasca and have the same level of growth.
Yeah.
The choice is yours, right? It's the
Yeah.
fast track that's a lot more intense versus a
Absolutely.
slower trajectory. So
Yeah, I often think about it as, would I rather learn this in life or like through this through
yeah,
this ceremony? And for me, I'd much rather learn the lesson in the ceremony, no matter how difficult it may
yeah.
be. It's a handful of hours versus go through a decade of my life or years of my life trying to learn some lessons. So
Yeah, I
um,
think that's a good way to look at it. I mean, for me, my last trip was, you know, very, speaking of, it felt like, Kundalini awakening and
mhm,
not being able to sit still and contain the energy flowing through my body. And
mhm,
also facing lots of fear and just
mhm,
processing and whereas in previous journeys I had sort of run from it a lot, I just was like, okay, I'm going to accept and face whatever is shown to me. And
mhm,
so much was shown to me that was like, you know challenging and difficult and frightening, and just saying, okay, thank you, I love you, I accept this, and then just
Hmm.
processing. And that's true. That's exactly how I viewed it. Is it's like, okay, I can process this in this state, or same thing even in dreams sometimes, or as opposed to actually needing to process it through, a 3D experience that, allows
Hmm.
you to move through the same fears and energy. And so I think that's, for me, a really
Hmm.
um, a powerful way to look at it. It gives you the opportunity to process things without having to have
Yeah.
the even harder lesson in real life, so to speak, if there is such a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the beauty of that is then you can take that, so you can take that directly into your life and then understand it. Whereas, like, I feel like I've had something similar this week where I was processing some fears and I was feeling them coming up, and I have, they often come in, right in my heart, and often when I wake up, they're there. And, or when I have when I have this occur. And sometimes the nature is just to like move away from it, try to get them to go away. And I was just, just going deeper into
Mm-hmm.
them and just fully experiencing them. And they just started dissipating. And, I don't know that that's something I would have, you know, maybe I would have thought to do it. I don't know if I would have believed it or experienced, without the experience of it. Cause I can hear you say it, or I can read it in a book, but knowing that I've kind of, done that and seen how powerfully that works, through ceremony. And, that's one of many lessons, then you can take that into your life and know, okay, well, this, this is learned. I know this I know this to be true because I've experienced it. And then, you bring those back, and that's really, that's integration. I think that's how do you take these breakthroughs and then, create new habits or new beliefs, um, around what you've experienced. And the fact that we're able to viscerally experience something, we're able to, depending on people, some people have it, see it with much more visions or feelings or experiences. um, it's so much more impactful than reading a book or
Yeah.
hearing someone tell you that. I think that's the beauty of these medicines. And certainly other practices can get you there too, with meditation and breath work and many other practices.
Sure. Sure. So I'd like to shift a little bit and talk about, the core values of your organization, because I was checking out your website, and it jumped out at me, the five core values that, sort of fuel and drive One Heart. And they're all such powerful values. I'd love to just hear you speak a little bit, and I'll just read them off to everyone. One
Hmm.
you have is lead with the heart. Two is give before receiving. Three is practice sacred reciprocity. Four is
Hmm.
be grateful. And five is remember. And
Hmm.
I'd love to just hear you, speak a little bit on each of these, if you would, and what they mean to you.
Sure. Yeah, I haven't actually been asked that on a podcast before, and excited to address it. Um, yeah, I think, as we think about, the way I like to think about core values, and I've always found them to be important in organizations, is um, yeah, I like them to be different than the typical, integrity, kindness, things
Mm-hmm.
that I don't want to say they're taken for granted, because a lot of times they're not in organizations. But I like to think about what's unique about what the business, what we're trying to do, and what, how would we instruct, or how would we want an employee or a partner or someone to operate that's different, or or that, maybe take some thought as to what that behavior is, versus maybe how they've been in another organization. So that's how I've thought about them. I think lead with heart is really the mission and purpose behind everything that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We want to elevate leaders so that they lead from their heart. Our goal is that, people come back from our journeys, and maybe they create a new business that, helps humanity, or maybe they go back to their existing business and treat people, in their companies better. Maybe they just make some more conscious, smarter decisions. But, really, where are you leading from? Really, the opposite of leading from the heart is fear. And not only is
Right.
that not a great strategy for business, but it's not going to yield the results that we likely want on this planet. So,
Right.
I think it starts there, and that's obviously what we try to embody and do ourselves. Um, give before receiving. Um, I think a lot of organizations, we also, my partner and I also started a kind of a startup group in Miami that organized a lot of the startup community. And this was a key component of it, because I think a lot of these meetups, a lot of these groups, it's people coming and like, what can I get? Like, who can I network with? Who, what does someone have to offer me? And I think the most powerful ways that, that type of exchange occurs is when you show up and you're just like, how can I be in service? How can I support others? How can I support this group? And when everyone's operating that way, it's pretty amazing what happens. And that's been a lot of the beauty of our, what's been built, this community, is just there's people just putting stuff out there and wanting to support each other. And people have started companies together, people have gotten married.
Right.
It's been beautiful, some of the relationships and experiences that have been formed as a result. Practice sacred reciprocity. This is something that really comes, it can come from a lot of places, but I think we took this a lot from the ayahuasca community. At the World Ayahuasca Conference, they talked a lot about really honoring and giving back to where these medicines come from. Not only the lands that they're coming from are being are being burnt down literally, and being forested. So and the elders and the teachers and the people behind these have put so much energy into the medicine that you're drinking. Many people may not all know, but the people growing the medicine, they're singing to it, they're loving it, they're creating this energy around it. There's a lot that goes into this medicine before it even kind of reaches your lips. And so really honoring that both in intention, in prayer, and we also give back financially with every journey, as well, to where the medicine came from. So, and helping, right now we're supporting a project called the Sacred Headwaters, which is helping protect a lot of lands in the Amazon. And so there's, we feel that that's an important piece of, you can think about it in terms of ayahuasca. You can also think about it in terms of just giving back to all that's giving to you. And that could be just a nice prayer, before each meal, and thinking about the food and where it's coming from. And if you're eating animals, where the animals came from, or the vegetables and all that went into that.
Yeah.
Be grateful. Obviously, it's a pretty common one, and I think you hear this in most personal development, self-help. I mean, it is, I think, one of the only formulas to really be happy and joyful and fulfilled in our lives. If we can't acknowledge and appreciate what's in our lives, that's likely a pattern that's going to continue, despite whatever else we acquire or do. So I think it really starts there, and just being grateful for what is. And I believe these medicines have a great way of assisting with that, in that they can strip away, oftentimes it's the fears or these self-limiting beliefs or things that are blocking us from just seeing what's already in our life. And usually, for most, especially, in the developed world and in our country, and, certainly people coming on our retreats, there's a lot of things around to be grateful for. And oftentimes those get really bogged down by, all the things we've just gotten so patterned into worrying about and thinking about. And then lastly, remember, I believe we're not truly, learning anything new. I think we're remembering, we're just remembering in this world. And so I think this whole journey is a path to remembrance. And one of our shaman that's led most of our retreats, always ended ceremony with "I am you, you are me, we are one," and that's something we've adopted as one heart. And truly symbolizes, I think, one, how really all the traditions kind of speak to is this oneness. And I think it's something that's experienced very viscerally and very clearly in the journeys. Very few people come out and don't have this message of, oh my God, we're all one, we're with each other, with nature. And if we can really get back to that place, and if we can really take that to heart, that's I think that's the mission of this world. And it's when all suffering really becomes alleviated. I think it's a super important message. And actually, my wife and I, I got her it was just our first anniversary, and I had a tattoo made up with these words on it because we had talked about getting a matching tattoo. We weren't able to actually go and get it given the quarantine, but we
Right.
have one designed that we plan to get
Oh,
at
cool.
some point soon. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love this because it really embodies something that I talk about all the time. Number two and number five. I mean, they're all so important. I think gratitude is the key to see more of what you want to see in your
Mhm.
world. Be grateful for what you have, where you're at, and that's how you open up the door to more. Of course, leading with the heart is, um, you know, getting out of the head so much and more into the heart is the path to fulfilling experience and interaction in
Mhm.
almost anyone who's been very mind centered that then works on moving into their heart. I don't think there's anyone who's then made that journey and said, "Oh, I got to get back in my head more." It doesn't happen. And you give before receiving. I love because it makes me think of the Gandhi quote I always quote, which is, "If you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others." And I
Mhm.
believe that holds true because of number five, which is, why does it hold true? Because there are no others. And so
Mhm.
this is how we actually give to ourselves, is by giving to another. And then that energy is reciprocal and comes back around, which gets back right into your, practicing sacred reciprocity. So it's all just, it's beautifully tied together. And yeah, this jumped out at me because all five of these points are so key and foundational
Mhm.
in my life. And I think the more these values can be spread, not just as like, oh, these are nice ideas, but actually this brings the life and the quality of life that, everyone is really seeking, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think what's beautiful is, yeah, just, I mean, that's why I like working with leaders, because it's like, the ability of we have people that from our journeys that have conferences that are 1,000 people, and they were like traditionally very real estate money focused conferences, and now they're doing breath work and talking about gratitude, and people are crying in them. And so
You're right.
we have people that go, we have a guy that leads turnarounds at like huge Fortune 500 companies, and he's going into these companies and teaching relationship dynamics to them, and integrating a lot of these messages. And it's pretty amazing, like if we really can just get some of these messages out, what even the smallest of things can do, as we kind of multiply that across people and organizations. So and I think that's what the path we're on. I think this, what we're going through now is accelerating things in many regards. And hopefully there continues to be more, or there will be more and more leaders kind of stepping up, feeling the call, and doing the work themselves so that they can lead others from the heart.
Right, right. Yeah, well said. So, obviously you've been doing this for a while. You've mixed it up with a bunch of very interesting, powerful leaders. And is there any, well, I love a good story, and the listeners love a good story. So I always ask, for a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive
Hmm.
paranormal story. That's one. And then, and
Okay.
maybe they could even weave together or be separate. I'm never going to turn down multiple good stories. But the other question that I have for you, aside from a synchronicity or serendipity, positive paranormal story, is any story of a guest, an entrepreneur, perhaps someone
Mhm.
that's participated that is particularly inspiring.
Hmm.
Either of those, and like I said, they may weave together or be two separate stories. But I'd love to hear
Yeah.
you speak on this.
Yeah, I just mentioned a couple. I can go into those in detail. The first thing, as far as the experience, the first thing that came to mind, I'm sure there's a bunch, but on our first journey, there was a couple that met, and they met. It's kind of the first signal I had that we were doing something right. I think it was like day two, and they were talking to my partner, and I walked up to see what they were talking about, and they went on to say that they had realized that they're each other's soulmates. This was before we even did medicine. It was after the night before we had done breath work, and during the breath work, they were sitting next to each other, and I think they ended up holding hands. They
Wow.
barely spoke at this point, and then like the next day, they were, they basically were had decided that they were each other's soulmates, and
Wow.
they're good friends of ours now. The guy actually moved to Miami. The woman was already here, and he kind of realized immediately that this whole process and this whole work was getting him ready so he could accept a woman of her caliber, and they could begin their lives together. And then they actually came back on our second journey, which was about 7 months later.
Hmm.
And they ended up getting engaged and married on that journey. So
Wow.
they got engaged at like day 3 or 4, and then we threw them a wedding, a shamanic wedding before they left. And funny enough, I ended up getting engaged to my to my wife on the same day, not
Oh,
knowing
wow.
that they had gotten engaged there. So that was pretty serendipitous. Actually, I was just thinking the way I met my wife was pretty serendipitous as well, but not necessarily related to our journeys. Um, uh, yeah, and I can go over to as far as the other question. I mean, there's a lot of people doing inspiring things. I think the two I mentioned are interesting in just the number of people that they're affecting.
Mm.
So, we have this guy Danny Morell. He runs a huge conference called Relentless. He's had like Kobe Bryant and other major people attend, and he's a big real estate guy, and he does real estate coaching, and brings together people for this conference and really helping them. It previously had been really helping them up level their business and their achievement and financial success. And even with the title, the relentless, obviously, working hard and achieving. And he's, I know at the last conference, he had introduced like breath work and meditation and in some of these practices. And there literally were people crying, writing him notes, just massive things happening. He's referred a ton of people have come on our journeys from his network. And it's just been powerful to watch his, he was this, really tough, really tough, hardworking, guy from LA. And still building and creating, but the Instagram posts he has and the way he's living his life, and he's now vegan, and doesn't drink, and just watching how he's been this example and what he's putting out to this community has been pretty powerful to watch. So I think that's been super impactful. Another one I like to mention is Keith Ferrazzi, and I'll bring I know he's told this story and is comfortable with me telling it, but he's a best-selling author. He consults big Fortune 500 companies, and he came on our second journey, and after like day 2 or 3, he brought up he said, is there anyone here that loves themselves? And if so, can you explain to me what that feels like? Because I don't fully understand that. And he probably one of the more, if not the most successful guy that was on our journey. I mean, had
Mm.
held senior executive positions at Fortune 500 companies, led turnarounds at them. Super successful, best-selling author, and just got us thinking that more than anything, I mean, these entrepreneurs, these type A's, we're trying to achieve all these things for a reason. We're trying to prove something for a reason, because there's something that oftentimes, might be missing there. So a lot of people look at, people with a lot of success and say, oh, well, they must be, they must love themselves, and, they don't go through this stuff. But in many cases, it's the opposite. And,
Right.
that led to a powerful discussion around self-love, and something that we've actually integrated, a new program we've integrated into our retreats. It's been, super impactful. But yeah, he now goes back into these Fortune 500 companies. He actually changed. He's coming out with a new book very soon. Um, and he changed the whole book up on Journey 2. He announced, like, he kind of rearranged the whole book around this concept of co-elevation and what we can all build together. And he's going back into these companies and teaching these new beliefs, these methods, at the highest level to some of the biggest companies. And so, and I've seen some of the feedback he's gotten back from, um, you know, top leaders at these companies, and they're buying into it and they're believing in it, and feel like it's the way forward. So those are the type
Cool.
of impacts we're looking to create. I mean, there's people that have started new businesses that have potential to do big things. It's early days still, but there's a lot of things that have occurred, people shifting their work from something more purely financially focused to more passion based and mission based, and a lot of that happening, which has been beautiful to watch.
Very cool. Yeah, it's going to be, and you're so early on the journey still, so it will be really interesting to have this conversation in 5 years, right? And see
Exactly. Yeah.
what ripples of impact, have transpired. The true
Yeah.
ROI that matters. So, very, very cool. Well, for those out listening who would be interested in possibly attending, I mean, is it something where anyone can come, on
Mhm.
one of the One Heart journeys, or is it only is there an application process? How And I know they may be on hold until the fall, but
Yeah.
what would that look like for anyone listening?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do have an interview process. Typically, myself or one of my partners interviews everyone that goes on the journeys. Uh, it's not exclusively entrepreneurs. I mean, we focus on leaders. So we look for people that have the ability, and in some cases they may not be fully stepped into that yet. But we look for people that have that ability to create and influence many others. And that may be that
Mm-hmm.
they've climbed the corporate ladder. It may be that they're doing amazing creative work and creating movies or other things. It may be that they've already started companies, or are looking to start companies that or sold companies that oftentimes those may not have been companies that have a mission, but they're looking to move towards that way. We're typically looking for people that that are looking to um, develop with more meaning, create something from a personal mission, and just generally good people. I think we've had just it's amazing how well the group has gotten along even before. I mean, typically before we even do our first ceremony on day one, I mean, the group's bonded, and and
Right.
it's pretty amazing how quickly the group gets together. So yeah, just looking for people that really want to be a part of a community, want to live some of these core, all of these core values really, and feel called to this experience. So, a lot of my interviews with them, I spend just really understanding what they're calling. Why are they called to this experience at this time? What is it in their life they're looking to shift? What is it they're looking to create? And yeah, for those looking to apply, they can do so on our website. Our website's oneheart.com. It's the number one and then HEART.com. There's an apply button there. Anyone who applies, put positive head as the refer, so we know where you came from, and we'll make sure we get you through the interview process as quickly as possible. So yeah, just oneheart.com, and we are taking applications for fall, and for we'll probably start for future journeys soon as well. But it's a good way to get into the application process now. We do expect there's a bit of a backlog in that we're kind of shifting people over from previous journeys, and have a lot of people that
Sure.
have applied and not able to attend. But it helps us to kind of build out. We're looking to as we build out that the people that want to go on the journeys, we'll do our best to create journeys to get people through as soon as possible.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it's not typically something that you know decide to do tomorrow, right? So especially if we're
Yeah.
traveling out of the country. So definitely, definitely something I can say I've highly recommend it from my own experience, and it's
Hmm.
it's for the people who are really wanting to do the deep work, and also want to be in a container where it's you know very safe, and
Hmm.
you're dealing with people who really know what they're doing, and it's obviously you've been dedicating yourself to this, and it sounds just like such an awesome crew to be a part of and to connect with. And and like you said, a lot of times with these things you never know. I mean, if you end up on a trip with someone, it's because you're meant to be there with them, you're meant to have
Hmm.
that experience with them, and what comes from that, who knows. It's so much potential. And I just applaud you for the work that you're doing, and perhaps I'll even make it on one of these journeys with you
Yeah, we would
sometime
love
as
that.
well. That would be epic.
Let's manifest that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, this has been super, super epic, Brandon. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and to help to shift the world the way that you are. It's
Yeah.
such important work, and I just applaud you. I do have one final question for you that I like to leave everyone off with, and it is this: in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Brandon Evans?
Wow.
A little cliche for you, to
That's
get
an
you on the
interesting
way.
time because I'm dealing. I've been questioning. I've been going back and forth on a couple of things there, but I think overall, um, for me, the meaning of life is joy and fulfillment, and
Mm,
it's to create that. And I think the only way to create that is to create that for not only ourselves and but others. So
mm.
I think really creating joy, creating fulfillment in this world, for both ourselves and for others. Um, Obviously there's a lot of other, I think deeper questions and meanings I can get into, but I think when I try to really just simplify it, um, that's how I think about it. The work that we're doing, are we creating more joy and more fulfillment in people's lives? Are the relationships that I'm in, are they creating more joy and fulfillment in my life? Are the decisions that I'm making creating more joy and fulfillment in my life? And I think that can guide, a lot of decisions, and it's hard to see that taking us, taking you to the wrong place. I think with, fulfillment being the key word, because I think that is typically a lot more than a short-term fix, but really what creates the fulfillment and the meaning in your life.
Well said, my friend. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for taking the time. This has been epic.
it has been. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
man. Yeah.
it's great.
Well,
It's great meeting another Brandon. I think I have to bring up. It's pretty funny. We were both named from the same the same
yes.
childhood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Speaking of synchronicity, yes. When we
Yeah.
connected, we were both named from the same Brandon who was on a TV show. You know which show, or you know his full
No,
name?
it's Brandon Cruz, and I think we
Brienne.
both. Yeah, just some I don't know. It was always, at least to me, a random actor that my mom saw in the credits, and I
Yep.
was I was
Yep.
asking you about how you were, because I don't usually meet many Brandons that are older than me, and I think you're a couple years
Yep.
older. And I was like,
Yep.
wow, and we got into it, and it's pretty funny. Somehow we were named after this seemingly obscure or somewhat obscure childhood actor, um,
Right. Right,
but
right, right.
we're
Well,
meant to
we're
connect.
I love to think about things like that. It's like, what is our connection to that actor? What is our connection to each other? Well, obviously we're connecting out of 7 billion
Yeah,
people on the planet now. So it's like those common threads and chords. So it's definitely inspiring to meet a kindred spirit, Brandon. And I still hold the reign as the oldest Brandon that I've come across. So I'm
yeah,
reigning champion.
pioneer.
So I am
Yeah,
your elder, Brandon. Don't forget it.
yeah, a little
uh,
elders council. Maybe you'll let me in that. And
yeah, exactly,
well,
exactly.
well, the pre 90210 Brandons.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in your hearts and minds. It has been such an epic adventure and journey. And until next time, journey well. Love you all so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.